The McShin Foundation is Virginia's leading peer-to-peer recovery community organization. So if you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, let us get you connected. Build your self-esteem and lead you to a solid foundation in your recovery. Check us out.
It's really great to be here. My name is Nora Milligan. I'm a woman in long-term recovery from a substance use disorder, and I'm also the parent of a young man who's in recovery, who's actually here with us tonight. So the CARE talks, the Comprehensive Addiction Recovery Empowerment talks, it's about bringing people in the recovery community out to talk about their experiences. So, everything that I'm going to say tonight, it's not an opinion, and it's not about me being right and you being wrong, or anybody being right and anybody being wrong. This is my experience, and it's authentic. I've been navigating recovery with my son for almost a decade now, and I feel that my experience is valuable. Tonight I'm talking about the topic of tough love. It's a misdirected conception, and it misdirects parents because we're only giving them half of the story. And we're all familiar with this term. It's been around since the 60s, and it's really kind of modified into mostly tough, and so tough love is practiced in our incarceration system, right? We punish them hard enough, we punish them enough, they'll stop using. It's practiced in our ERs, right? If they overdose over and over and over, eventually they'll figure it out and they'll stop. And it's practiced in our family communities. We laugh about just say no, but for parents, like the campaign is just kick them out. Just kick them out, leave them on the street, they'll figure it out when the pain gets great enough. So myself, I picked up my first drink and drug at the age of 13, and by the time I was 19, my parents were pretty familiar with bailing me out of jail and getting me lawyers, and they were pretty familiar with sleepless nights and all those things that come with this disease. And they practiced tough love, and they disconnected. And by the time I was 19, I was not unfamiliar with the inside of a jail cell. Been there quite a few times. It didn't fix me. I was familiar with wondering where I was going to sleep at night. I was familiar with hunger. I was familiar with desperation. I was familiar with violence, and I was definitely familiar with pain. So again, like tough love is based in this concept that pain is the motivator. And so when I found myself at the age of 19, after I'd been beat up pretty good, and I was standing and looking at myself in a mirror, and this face that was looking back at me was beat up, and in that moment, I was in a lot of pain. And they say pain is the motivator, pain is what gets them willing, right? And it did. In that moment, pain got me so willing. It got me willing to believe that I was worthless. It got me willing to believe that I would never live a better life. It got me willing to believe that the things that were actually going on in my life at that moment were normal, right? That's what goes with this disease, when the abnormal becomes normal and we begin to accept that this is how it is. And I began to believe that my family didn't love me, and I began to believe that I wasn't worth it, and I began to believe that I was never going to get better, and I began to believe that it was okay for me to just die. And that thinking went on for a long time, because what was missing with the pain was the solution. So pain is the motivator. But if the pain of the consequences is not met and embraced with patience, tolerance, new direction, and recovery solutions based in love and support, then these brief and life-altering opportunities to engage a person in recovery are lost. Instead of birthing a willingness to get better, pain can give an individual the willingness to get worse, because recovery capital is depleted and a clear path to a solution is not present. Hope and self-worth have become non-existent. So what does all this mean to help our parent community? I'm really glad we talked about stigma tonight, because here's the thing. First, how we help the parent community is we stop shaming them. My substance use disorder included alcohol, it included IV drug use. You could call me a drunk, you could call me a junkie, you could call me an addict, and nothing hurts me, and nothing bears down in my heart more than when you call me an enabler. It's a shame-based word. We're running around, we're shaming parents, and we're pushing families away. And again, this is my experience that for me, I'm a woman in long-term recovery. I'm a healthy addition to my son's recovery. And it makes providers really uncomfortable when I start asking them questions like, well, what's your client to what's your counselor to patient ratio? what are your outcomes? And you know what they say to me? They say, you're too involved in his recovery. You need to go away. It makes them really uncomfortable. So we can do this as a recovery community. I'm asking you as a parent who's worked at this long and hard to start extending your language modification to the families, right? We say it's a family disease. Please, we've got to start thinking about the families as well, in the sense that we don't call each other addicts. We don't use these shame-based words. We've got to help the families as well. So we can start with this amongst the providers, amongst the families. We can stop with the E word. We don't need the shaming in the midst of a crisis. We don't need you telling us, just kick them out. It's not a cookie cutter type thing. So that's what we get when we just practice the tough. Tough without love is punishment, and detachment without love is abandonment, and that's what I experienced. So we have to equip families with something different. So really, in all honesty, right, we know this. Good kids can make bad choices, and great parents can have kids that grow up and have a substance use disorder. So let's get away from this word tough. And I'm not saying that every part of what tough love is not working, because we do have to have boundaries, we do have to have disciplines in place, but the word tough itself, it misleads people. How about healthy? So healthy love, and this is my experience, is based in approaching our loved ones with strategies and communication skills that replenish recovery capital. Healthy love promotes self-care and boundaries, which improves our ability to engage with our loved ones in a way that encourages them to reach for help and hope that recovery is possible for them. Healthy love has the ultimate goal of maintaining open communication and finding opportunities to connect our loved ones with authentic recovery supports, whether they want it or not. And what I mean by that, whether they want it or not, isn't that I'm going to force it down their throat, but I'm saying there are moments where my son has been actively using, he runs into some consequences, and he calls me and he needs something from me. And I've literally said to him, okay, you need this from me, but I need something from you. I need you to meet with this man for an hour, and I need you to hear everything he has to say, and you don't have to tell me anything, and you don't have to have an opinion about it. Just hear him and take his number, and then I'll buy you some food, or I'll get you a pack of cigarettes, or whatever it is. I'm an enabler. And this is my experience, that then a month later, when he really blows his life up, right, because it's a progressive disease, he'll call me up and he'll say to me, I need help. And I say to him, remember that man you met with a month ago? You call that man. That was an opportunity to engage him, because even though, and this is something I had to learn that was pretty humbling, was even though I had my own recovery, when it came to my son, my recovery did not help there. He cannot hear me, even though I work a great recovery program, I help a lot of people, but when it came to my own son, he can't hear me. But I know where he can hear. I know where he can get a message. And so please, parents, if you're out there and if you're people in recovery, we have to get familiar with our RCOs, with recovery coaches, with these languages, with our 12-step programs, and we have to start to have strategies that connect. Tough love is disconnecting and it's abandoning. And I will tell you that by the time I was 19 years old and I was in that state of willingness to die, my dad found out where I was, because my parents didn't even know where I was, and he got in a car and he drove across country and he rescued me. He's such an enabler. And he rescued me. And in that moment, my father met my pain and consequences with patience, love, and tolerance. And for that moment, it kept me alive. It was another 20 years before I heard a recovery message that then could bear through the amount of trauma that I had on board and I could get well. But in that moment, my father saved my life, my parents, both of them, because my mom sent him. And what he was missing was the ability to connect me with authentic recovery supports. So to this day, I'm so grateful to my father, who showed me to never give up and never cut off communication with my child. Pain is the great motivator, but love conquers all. Our loved ones, when they're in active addiction, they don't need tough love. They need us to love them while it's tough. So when my son woke up in a hospital bed at this one moment in his recovery, and for the first time ever, I wasn't pushing him and forcing him into reaching for treatment. He reached for treatment, and the insurance company said no. And I was all stressed out. What was I going to do? How was I going to get him help? And there was the answer that I got from most people, and we do this: just go home and pray about it. Just go home and pray on it. You got to let go and let God, you know? And I did. I went home and I prayed about it, and I went to sleep, and I woke up, and when I woke up, I remembered there was more to that prayer, that acceptance prayer. Like, accept me, give me the serenity. Courage to change the things I can. And I began to fight, and I began to advocate. My fist bombs are in the house. And we got on a bus, and we went up there, and up to Albany, and we fought, and we changed laws, and we became proactive, and we began to educate legislators, and we began to change things. And I'm telling you, if you're in the state of New York and you've accessed treatment in the last 3 years, you did that because of families, because we fight. Enough with shaming us and asking us to go away. We are an important part of the solution here. But I will say this, let's not throw the tough away completely. Let's save the tough. Let's save the tough for the jail systems, for the hospitals, for the emergency rooms that have long overdue needed protocols. Let's save the tough to pressure JCAHO, the Joint Commission, to put these protocols in the hospitals. I'm a critical care RN, and I'm telling you, you can change all the laws you want up in Albany until you get the DOH, the CMS, and JCAHO involved, and you force the issue in the emergency rooms, they're not gonna do it. Let's save the tough for the legislators who walked away from the table this year because it wasn't an election year and they didn't give us any of our asks. Let's save the tough for them. Let's save the tough for the doctors who overprescribe, and we know that. Let's save the tough for the insurance companies. Let's save the tough for the unqualified and misleading and fraudulent providers that would love to label me an enabler and have me go away, because then they can just keep churning my kid through treatment after treatment and send me the bill. They do want me to pay the bill. So let's save the tough for that. And my mamas are tough. My Italian friend Nicole, she can make a drug dealer cry, I'm telling you. Mamas are tough. So the greatest tough that I want to extend is out to, at this moment, is out to the pharmaceutical companies. And I applaud AG Schneiderman here in New York, who has partnered with 41 other AGs across the country, and they subpoenaed the pharmaceutical companies. And as part of the payment, when it comes down the pipe and we find out that at least they were guilty of misleading at best, and I believe they blatantly lied, and they changed the cultures in the hospitals to a culture that was apprehensive and cautious about prescribing narcotics to one that was risk-free and overprescribed. I saw it happen. With the pain as a fifth vital sign, they did it. And the pharmaceutical companies not only need to pay in monetary value so that they foot and fund our treatment to help our people, but they need to make Narcan, I believe, available for at least the next 3 years for free. For me, that picture says 1,000 words. I will never practice tough with my son. I will always answer the phone when he calls. I will not fix things for him, but I will always have options available for him. And as long as he is upright and breathing, I can't stand when I go to these funerals and they say, oh, it's for people who want it, not people who need it. You know what? If you woke up this morning, you open your eyes and you're breathing, recovery is for you, and we can do this together. Thank you.